Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 10th of August 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says Supreme Court alters Lodha's BCCI proposals. So what exactly is the context? So the Supreme Court has actually finalized one of the new charters for the Board of Control for Cricket in India, that is the BCCI, which is one of the major controllers of the cricket in India, while actually rejecting the one state one vote recommendation of the Justice Lodha Committee recommendation. So let's try and understand what exactly are the various changes that the Supreme Court has actually commented with the earlier one, that is the Lodha Committee recommendation. So the first point is with respect to the voting rights. So what exactly had the Lodha Committee said? So the Lodha Committee had said that every state, that is, let's say for example Karnataka is represented, then Maharashtra is represented, then Gujarat is represented, Tamil Nadu. So each state in India, and in case the Union Territory is also playing cricket, then each state and Union Territory will be represented in BCCI, and each state will have just one vote. Let's say for example in Gujarat there are number of other cricketing boards, for example the Baroda board, or for example the Saurashtra Cricket Association. So these independent associations which are already existing within Gujarat will not be given the writing vote, but instead only one state with respect to one vote is what would be accommodated. However, the Supreme Court has not accepted this particular recommendation and has said associations that are also based in Maharashtra and Gujarat will also retain the full retainship. That is, let's say another state like Maharashtra where it has another association like the Mumbai Association, or for example the Vidarbha Cricket Association, and in Gujarat, as we have discussed, there is Baroda and Saurashtra Cricket Associations. So all these associations which are part of the particular state will still be holding a membership in the BCCI. So what exactly is the Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court has said that we cannot actually ignore the history or the contributions. These associations have made a lot of contribution to the cricket, and these associations have contributed a number of cricketing legends, and because they have contributed a number of legends and they have contributed enormously to this particular religion of cricket, we cannot actually dissociate them. That is why we should make sure that all these associations which are a part of that state will also be represented in the BCCI. That's the first argument which is going against the Lodha Committee. So the next important point that it says is with respect to the cooling off period. So the Lodha Committee had actually suggested that only after one term the cooling off period has to be removed. So what do you mean by it? Let's say for example there is a particular person who is actually contesting elections in the BCCI. So this particular person after 3 years will not be able to contest the elections once again. That is what the Lodha Committee had said. But what the Supreme Court has said is that it will be for the 2 consecutive terms. So the Lodha Committee had said it for 3 years, but the Supreme Court has said it is for 6 years. Let's say for example a particular person has actually represented the West Bengal Association. Let's say Saurav Ganguly for that matter. So he is representing West Bengal Association. So again after representing West Bengal he would again be able to represent in BCCI. So it will be 2 consecutive terms here, that will be 6 years. So the Supreme Court has said that one cooling off period is not enough, let it be 2 years, so that will be 6 years on a trot. So why exactly is this cooling off period required? One is to make sure that these few individuals who are getting time and again elected in this particular cricket administration are not taking over the cricket administration, because there are also other individuals and these individuals will also contribute to the cricket, and because cricket is a religion in India in itself, there needs to be efficiency in the administration, and because there needs to be efficiency in the administration, it cannot be a personal turf of only one person, but instead all the people should have to contribute this particular BCCI administration, and that is why there needs to be 2 consecutive terms. After this 2 consecutive terms, this person who is already elected for 2 terms will not be able to contribute after this. That is because there needs to be given a provision for other people to contribute to cricket, and that is why after 2 consecutive terms these people will not be able to contest for the elections within the domain of BCCI is the cooling off period. And after that what it goes on to say is there is no full membership to associations with no state entity. That is, in case they do not have a state entity like the Gujarat or Maharashtra or for example Bihar, then these people will not be given a clarity and these people will not be a part of full membership. However, the Supreme Court has said certain things like the services, the railways or the Association of Indian Universities will still have membership. But what it has actually said is that there are certain other cricketing clubs clubs, let's say for example the National Cricket Club or for example the Cricket Club of India, these people do not deserve the full membership. But there are few other cricketing associations like the Railways or the Association of Indian Universities, this will have the deserving full membership. But those like the National Cricket Club or the Cricket Club of India has to be removed, is what it further goes on to say. And at the same time, with respect to the tenure of post, total of 9 years at BCCI or state universities has been set by Lodha, but the Supreme Court hasn't still said anything with respect to the same, which we will be discussing in the future. So what exactly does it speak about the composition? So when we look into the composition, the council would consist of a chief executive officer, chief financial officer and other officers who must be recruited on a transparent and a professional basis. Of the 9 members of the Apex Council, 5 will be the president, the vice president, secretary, joint secretary, treasurer and a member are to be elected by the general body. And then the court retained that the Lodha panel suggestion of barring government ministers or government servants from holding cricket office. So any person who currently has a government, who is a government servant, will not be able to take part in this particular process. And it also upheld the age of cap of 70 years for all the cricket administrators. And at the same time, what we also need to look at it is in terms of the eligibility criteria. So it has also modified the number of selectors. So currently when you look into the number of selectors who are actually there, it is 3, and this has been modified to 5 people. So what exactly is the basic core idea? So the basic core idea as to why these people are the number of people who are actually increased to 5 is because India is a vast country. It travels the length and breadth from north to south, east to west. You will have to find out talent, and in order to find out talent, what you need to do is you need to travel a lot, you need to do extensive research, and these selectors will have to travel extensively in order to find the talent from the pool of cricketers from north, south, east, west. And in order to encourage both these players in the domestic as well as in the international circuit, what we need is the number of selectors. So it has actually retained this particular selector list, that is from 3 to 5. What exactly is the eligibility for the selection committee members? So what it says is, for the senior committee should have played, I mean those players who will be a part of the senior committee, they should have played at least 7 tests or 30 first class matches or 10 ODIs and 20 first class games. Should be a retired cricketer of at least 5 years. So you should have retired from cricket for at least 5 years. And junior committee should have played 25 first class games. Should be a retired cricketer of 5 years once again. For women's committee, should have played for India and be a retired cricketer for 5 years. In all cases, the senior most will be the chairperson. Whoever will be the senior most in that particular zone will be the chairperson. Head coach to be appointed by the cricket advisory committee. So this is the changes with respect to the Supreme Court. We will be looking into it once again with respect to the pending cases that have been left out with respect to the same. Once we have a clear-cut picture with respect to the age cap as well as the tenure of post, we will be discussing this once again. As of now, this is all we will have to know with respect to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article speaks about the criminalization of politics. So what exactly is the context? So when we look into the context, it clearly goes on to say that the Chief Justice who was actually presiding over the 5-judge constitution bench was actually hearing a number of petitions. One was related to facing the number of charges with respect to the heinous crimes like the murder, the rape or the kidnapping from all those people who have been contesting elections and transforming this whole process of elections into parliamentarians. So those people who are contesting elections with having heinous crimes are actually transforming themselves into parliamentarians and legislators in state assemblies. So all that the Supreme Court is currently doing is, how is that these people who have heinous crimes of rapes and murders are actually entering up to this particular fold of parliamentarians as well as the state MLAs in the state assemblies. So thing that we have to understand is what exactly is the current status. So when we look into the current status, right, one of the things that we have to understand is, under the Representation of the People's Act, only the convicted lawmakers are disqualified, not the accused. So who exactly is a convicted? Only those persons who have faced the criminal prosecution and they have actually gone to the court, and then the court has actually given a judgment. Only those people who have given the judgment and the conviction will be disqualified. But in case, let's say this is just in the accusation state, say for example someone has accused him of a particular rape or a heinous crime, but it is still not proved in the rule of law or in the courts, then such people are not disqualified for now. So let's try and understand what exactly are the heinous crimes with respect to the facts and the rapes. So from the ADR's compilation of data on 5,000 2,380 candidates contesting the Lok Sabha election of 2014, 17% have declared criminal charges in the affidavit submitted to the Election Commission. So 10% have declared serious criminal charges such as murder and rape charges. At the same time, the proportion of MPs in the 15th Lok Sabha facing criminal charges is not only high but actually increased between the 2004 and 2009 Lok Sabhas. So kindly remember these facts when you are speaking about anything to do with the criminalization of politics. Now that we will have the elections in the 2019, so kindly remember the ADR will come up with a similar affidavit progress, and whatever facts are again provided by the ADR, kindly make sure you remember the facts back then. For now, these are the factual details that we will have to quote. So anything, any question whatsoever with respect to criminalization of politics, we will have to give up these facts to show that there has been a drastic increase in the criminalization of politics in the 15th Lok Sabha. It has increased with time from 2004 to 2009, and from 2009 to 2015 it has actually increased, and that is what we need to show in this particular factual data. So what is the most important thing is what are the various steps that have been taken. One of the things that has been suggested in this particular article is the Attorney General Venugopal has actually submitted that fast track courts have to be established in order to make sure that all these people who have been there as accused, these people should have to be put up in a particular fast track court, and the fast track courts will have to work effectively so that these people, in case they are proved that they have committed a heinous crime, they should be barred from contesting the elections. So apart from this, there have been number of things that have been taken in the past. Let's say for example the Election Commission of India. So the Election Commission has taken a number of steps in order to make sure that the muscle power as well as the money power does not actually achieve success in the elections. Some of the things that it has actually done is it has implemented the model code of conduct, and at the same time what it has done is it has established the monitoring cell. So number of people who are actually entering the politics, right, these people are entering politics because they have the muscle power and the money power. So what the Election Commission has done is, in order to make sure these people are not effectively using their muscle power and the money power, it has set in the model code of conduct and also set up the expense monitoring cell. And because it's an expense monitoring cell is being set up, it keeps constantly monitoring if how exactly is this person getting the money. In case he's getting money from the unknown sources, how exactly is it being done. All these things is being watched under the eyes of the Election Commission. And at the same time, what it has already done is, we know for the fact that there is something called as affidavits. So these affidavits will have something called as the number of lists that they'll have to encounter. So for this particular affidavit, any person who is actually filing his nomination has to provide certain declaration of the assets and at the same time the existing criminal charges. So any person, responsible citizen who feels that this is a person who is having the heinous crime, he would be able to go to the Election Commission website. He would be able to see what exactly are the criminal offenses on this person, because it's already posted on the affidavit. So in case you realize that this person has something of a criminal background, then you can avoid voting for this particular person. So one thing is the model code of conduct, then you have the expense monitoring, and the third thing is the affidavits. And because we have the affidavits, we would be able to know who exactly is a person who has committed crime, and we would be able to avoid voting to this particular person in the future elections. So these are some of the steps that have been taken by the Election Commission of India. At the same time, the Supreme Court has also not kept quiet. The Supreme Court has also come up with a number of judgments in the past. One of the important judgments is with respect to the Lily Thomas case. So what exactly happened in the Lily Thomas case that happened in the year 2013? So the Supreme Court said that all those people who are convicted, that is the MPs and the MLAs, will be disqualified from contesting the elections. So one of the things that it established in the Lily Thomas case in 2013 is, in case you are convicted, in case it is the MP who is convicted by the court of law, then these people will not be able to contest the elections. It proved it clearly. So all those people, let's say for example, in case they are trying to contest elections in spite of conviction, they'll not be able to contest the elections. At the same time, what the Supreme Court has also done is, in the Jan Chowkidar case, it has said, in case you are accused and you are in jail and you have committed some mistake, even in that particular case, you will not be able to contest the elections. So in case you are in jail, again you are barred from contesting the elections, is what the Supreme Court has done in the Jan Chowkidar case, that is in the 2013 verdict. So these are some of the measures that have been taken, but kindly remember all the factual information, the number of steps that has been taken, so that your answer becomes a comprehensive one. We will be discussing this once again in case the government actually comes up with the supportive arguments in case of the criminalization of politics. But as of now, this is all we will have to know from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says India gained exponentially from the US nuclear deal. So what exactly is the background of this? So what we will have to understand is that the nuclear suppliers group actually came up with a particular cutoff date in the year 1967, and this date was actually drafted in 1967, which said that all those countries which currently have the particular nuclear power can actually continue with its nuclear profits, but all those countries which are planning to come up with the execution of the nuclear test after 1967 are barred from actually conducting a particular test. But what exactly happened after 1967? India did test its particular nuclear power, and India became a nuclear power in 1974, and India became power in 1974, after which India faced a lot of sanctions from all the Western countries except for to some extent by France. So because it led to a lot of transactions, because India actually overcame this particular cutoff date, what we required was some assistance, and India did not get any assistance, but with time it was comparatively reduced. Again, what exactly happened in 1998? India tested Pokhran 2, and again after this particular nuclear program, there was lot of sanctions that happened from United States of America, it happened from Japan as well as Australia. So with time, again this had to be brought down. So what exactly happened was India and US actually entered a particular framework agreement in order to change the course of this particular relationship, and that was the civil nuclear deal that happened in the year 2008. So what exactly happened was India in the 2008 entered the Indo-US civil nuclear deal to make sure that all those sanctions that were put to India as a result of its nuclear power testing was actually reduced to a certain extent. So why exactly had to India take place this particular program? So India did not have to take place this particular program, but it happened to take care of this particular nuclear program because of certain impediments that it saw with respect to its regional neighbor. So what exactly happened was India had three strategic errors. So what exactly was the error? So first was in terms of the partition. So India was actually into two parts, that is the same India, and then we had Pakistan. So Pakistan as a country was always a threat to India, and because Pakistan was a major threat to India's sovereignty and integrity, they were also in disguise were controlling a number of nuclear programs with the help of China. India could not have sustained this. What if tomorrow there is a major threat from Pakistan in terms of the nuclear war? So in order to overcome this issue, what India had to do was India had to make sure that even it is able to handle this nuclear war zone, and that is why it had to come up with this Pokhran 1. And the next thing that it says is the error of economics. So initially we had something of a socialist economic policy which did not derive much of an economic growth for India. So what exactly happened was there was error of economics, where many of the reforms which are supposed to happen pre 1990s happened at 1990s. So all these liberalization that we happened in 1990s, that is the LPG that happened in 1990, should have been initiated much earlier, but because of the social economic policy we did not do it. That is why is the another problem, is what the Foreign Secretary Jaishankar says. And at the third thing that it goes on to say is with respect to delay in conducting the nuclear test. Let's say for example China actually went about conducting its nuclear test in 1950. That's why it became a major power, and that is why it is a part of permanent thing, and that is why there is no sanctions on China, because the nuclear supplier groups actually put down a cutoff date in 1967. Had we conducted the same nuclear test much before China or in times before 1967, we would not have suffered. And because we are suffering only because India didn't actually make sure that it conducted the nuclear test. So what this particular article goes on to say is that because we had all these things, that is why India had to take up a call, and that is why we took up this particular call of actually becoming a nuclear state. And with time USA has also supported us, because we enter into a particular framework, and because we entered into a particular framework, USA has supported us time and again with respect to the civil nuclear deal. So what exactly are the advantages because India entered into this particular deal? One of the major advantage with respect to why this became a major advantage with respect to India and major benefit is it gave a permanent access to the nuclear fuel. So because we were actually given access to the nuclear fuel, what exactly happened was there were number of agreements that we entered with a number of dozen countries. So because we have this access to the nuclear fuel, India was able to get access to its nuclear proliferation, that is in terms of the power making in the nuclear sector, by entering into agreement with the number of countries. And at the same time, what it also did was it changed the international perception. Let's say for example, no one actually objects to India in case it conducts a missile test today, but the same thing in case Pakistan conducts a nuclear test, everyone see it in a negative limelight. But if it is India which is conducting it, no one actually gets scared, but India actually conducting it becomes a matter of strength for India and also for the regional stability. And also what is the most important thing is India also gained the technological and the space collaboration with the US, and this also increased the Indo-US cooperation in this subcontinent. So all these became the advantages because India happened to enter the civil nuclear deal. So these are the major advantages with respect to this particular deal. So this is all we will have to understand from this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says will continue oil trade with India. So what exactly is this article all about? So when you look into the context, what we see is India is one of the third largest export market after the United States and China. But what is happening with time is there has been the exports from Venezuela to India has actually fallen by about 25%. So in order to make sure that this does not actually contribute to the loss with respect to the India and Venezuelan relationship, the ambassador to India from Venezuela has actually said this will not be the same way, it will be actually increased with time. But what exactly is the major problem? The country is not able to produce enough petrol or for that matter oil in Venezuela. The prime reason is because of the unabated sanctions that has been put up on the Venezuela. So why exactly has the USA contributed or sanctions on Venezuela? One of the things that is being said is that President Trump actually feels that President Nicholas, who has actually won the elections recently, has actually won the elections through the fraudulent means. So democracy which was established in Venezuela was actually replaced by another president, and that is Hugo Chavez. So Hugo Chavez was a person and he was the president until 2013, but he died of cancer, and after this it was replaced by Nicholas. But what is being said is that Nicholas has actually won this particular elections by fraudulent means. So because of winning the elections in fraudulent means and also running the country into deep recession and also in inflation, and this has further caused a lot of food shortages, and also number of migrants have been moving from Venezuela into another countries. So what Mr. Trump actually feels is because Mr. Nicholas has actually won it by a fraudulent means, because of deep recession, because of hyperinflation, and because of food shortages that are happening in Venezuela, and because there is exodus of migrants into neighboring countries, this person has to be taught a lesson, and that is Nicholas have to be taught a lesson, and that is why there is sanctions from United States of America. However, what the ambassador here says is it is a small glitch in our economic growth, but we will come back very strongly is what he has actually said. In order to overcome this particular issue, what he has also said is in order to counter the economic crisis and hyperinflation, Venezuela has adopted a new currency called as Petro. Kindly remember this cryptocurrency Petro. This is from the Venezuela, which will actually start circulating from August 20. So Petro is actually pegged to the international price of the oil. So this can become a potential question with respect to your prelims. So kindly remember that Petro is actually a cryptocurrency from Venezuela. And also what is being said is that it is also said that India is actually backing this particular move. It is said that the foreign minister Sushma Swaraj has actually said that India would not back any unilateral sanctions, as these sanctions are actually imposed by the United States and not in consensus with the United Nations, and that is why we're approaching this particular thing in the normal mode is what Sushma Swaraj has actually said from India. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says Trudeau stands firm amid dispute with Saudi Arabia. So what exactly is the context? So when we look into the context, what we will realize is that Saudi Arabia has actually arrested a number of female human rights activists. So one of the activists was Samar Badawi. So Samar Badawi was a person who was actually a human rights activist who was actually retained last week, and her brother Raifi Badawi was also retained by these Saudi Arabian security personnel. So because of this, what exactly happened was the Canada's foreign ministry sensed that there is a violation of human rights, so it asked Saudi Arabian embassy to immediately release the human rights activists. So what Saudi Arabia did was it got agitated, but some other country is actually meddling with its internal affairs. So it said that there was something, an overt and a blatant interference of its internal affairs of the kingdom of the Saudi Arabia by another country, and that is Canada. So because Canada actually said that these human rights activists have to be removed, and this was not taken easily by Saudi Arabia, and because Saudi Arabia felt that Canada was actually misusing its rights and it is actually meddling with the internal affairs of Saudi Arabia. So this is the overall background. So what exactly is the issue in picture? Samar Badawi was actually a person who was actually campaigning for the Saudi Arabia's guardian laws. So Saudi Arabia has a very strange law. So all that it says is at every step of a particular life of a woman, she always has to be supported by a male guardian. So at the time of child, she has to be represented by a father. When she is married, she has to be represented by a husband. When she becomes old, she has to be represented by her son. So what the Saudi Arabian guardian law says is she cannot be independent, but instead she always has to be supported by a male guardian. So what Miss Badawi was actually doing is she was fighting against the Saudi Arabia guardianship laws, and at the same time her brother Rafi Badawi was also against the criticality of the Saudi's religious establishment. Like for example, there were a number of people who were actually chopped off their hands, and there were a number of people who were actually chopped off their heads because of the adultery and so on. So all these things he was fighting against. That is, the Saudi Arabia's religious establishment was actually taken upon by this Rafi Badawi. So all these things that were being done was against the human rights violations that was being conducted in the Saudi Arabian government. So in order to overcome all these human rights violations, these two people started telling that whatever the Saudi Arabian government is currently doing is actually wrong. So these people were actually arrested, and this arrest was not taken easily by Canada, and that is why Saudi Arabia has actually told that you cannot actually interfere with our internal affairs. So but this is not all. So Saudi Arabia has also made some progress with respect to the economical and political change. What has happened with time is it has actually given permission to the women to actually drive very recently, and it has also cracked down on number of hardliners among the clergy that are there within the area. But what is exactly happening is that these people are transforming, but this is happening at a very lower rate, and this is not happening at a faster rate. So what exactly is the immediate reaction of the Saudi government? Now that there is some problem with respect to the Canada as well as Saudi Arabia, what exactly is the immediate consequence? So what exactly happened was the Canadian ambassador was asked to leave the country, and then they have also recalled their ambassador who was posted in Canada, and they have actually cancelled the direct flights that were supposed to be happening with respect to the Toronto. So they've cancelled direct flights to Toronto by the Saudi Arabia state airline. They have announced a plan to actually relocate all the state scholar students who are studying in Canada. So they have asked to transfer from Canada to some other countries in case they have educational purposes, and they have actually transferred all the Saudi patients who are there in the Canadian hospitals, and they have moved them to some other country. Apart from this, this can also be an economical impact to Canada. How exactly is it? So Saudi Arabia is currently the second largest export destination in West Asia, and at the same time recently these two countries, Canada and Saudi Arabia, had entered into a signed agreement, and that was to do with 12 billion arms deal. So this will also be cancelled in the future. They have actually started selling off all the Canadian assets that are there, and have also suspended new trade and investment with respect to Canada. So there is going to be some problem with respect to both their relationship. We will be discussing once again with respect to this in the future classes as well. Okay, so moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says panel favors power for SEBI to intercept phone calls. So what exactly is the context? So there was a particular committee that was appointed under the chairmanship of the former law secretary, and that is Mr. Vishwanath. So along with Mr. Vishwanath, there were other people who were about industrialists, and then there were lawyers, consultants, stock exchanges, mutual funds, and also investment bankers. So this panel has actually suggested currently the security and the Exchange Board of India does not have power to actually look into the particular call records. All it can do is it can ask for a particular call number and then it can investigate, but it is not in the present situation that it does not have powers to actually look into a particular or tap the telephone calls. So what this panel has actually suggested is that it actually seeks the powers to actually tap the telephone calls, intercept the phone calls for better investigation while strengthening the regulations to act against perpetrators of financial statements fraud. So what exactly happening in this particular case is, in case there is a particular company and the company has actually gone about financial fraud, then SEBI will be able to step up its particular idea of actually looking and stopping this particular fraud by actually tapping a particular conversation. Currently we do not have such provisions. After giving a particular request to the central government or for example the Home Ministry, it would be able to find the call details, but from now on, according to the panel's recommendations, they still not accepted, but it has suggested that the panel has actually said that SEBI would be able to tap the phones, which is already a provision that is granted to the Central Board of Taxes. So what it will be able to do is it will be able to intercept the calls, listen to what exactly is happening between the company and the organization, only to make sure that the fraud that can happen is actually stopped and kept at the very minute level. So what we will have to understand in this particular case is that proper checks and balances must also be ensured. So what needs to be put is a proper hierarchy. How exactly has a permission being taken, who exactly would be able to intercept this particular call, all these hierarchical steps and the permissions should be put up in a particular law, and then they will be able to take up this particular move from now on. So what it is further gone on to say is that it has said that the panel is in favor of including a new subsection within the SEBI Act to prohibit schemes or tricks to manipulate the books of accounts and financial statements or hide diversion, misutilization or siphoning of public issue proceeds. So apart from the phone tapping, what it has already said is, in case you have released a particular notification or a particular IPO, what you will have to do is you will have to use the money for the same thing, but instead you cannot siphon off the money from the public and use it for some other purpose. So you would have released a particular security only for an intended purpose. All the money that you are taking from the general public has to be utilized for the purpose that you have taken it from, but instead you cannot actually move or divert this particular money from you have taken from the general public to another organization or to another sector, or you cannot move it to some other work that you wish to do, is the point that it clearly goes on to say. And the next point that it says is, the panel has also proposed broadening the ambit of manipulating and unfair trade practices, stating that listed firms should have policies to deal with the leaks of unpublished price sensitive information. So all the things have to happen in a transparent and accountable way. So in case you are actually leaking unpublished resources, then these people will also have to brought under books, is what this particular article has actually said. So it has actually suggested this particular recommendation, so we will have to wait and see if SEBI is actually going to accept this particular recommendation. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says UAE top source of inward remittances in 2016-17, says RBI. So when we look into the context, the RBI has actually released one of the survey of the inward remittances for 2016 and 17. So this is a factual article, so let's try and discover what exactly are the facts. So it says UAE share in the total remittances was 26.9%, and this was followed by United States and then by Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Kuwait. So UAE has sent the maximum number of remittances. That is what we'll have to understand. According to the survey, 82% of the total remittances received by India originated from 8 countries, and this includes UAE, US, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, United Kingdom as well as Malaysia. So number of people who are working in these countries are comparatively more. It is these people, the Indian diaspora who is located in these areas, are sending remittances back home to India. Among the destinations, Kerala has the highest share with 19%, followed by Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Delhi. Kindly remember these factual information. It can also be a potential question in your prelim examination. Kerala, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu Nadu together have actually received 58% of the remittances. Another important fact is more than half of the remittances received by the Indian residents were used by family maintenance, consumption, followed by the deposits in banks, and investments in the land, property and shares is actually about 8.3%. Further, it has said the rupee drawing arrangement is the most popular channel of remittances, which amounts to about 75% of the remittances, which is followed by the SWIFT and then the direct transfer, and finally with respect to the checks as well as draft, that is 1.9%. And private banks have got the maximum remittances, and that is up to 74.1%, while the public sector banks have actually got a share of about 17.3%, and the remaining with respect to the foreign banks. So this is just a factual information. Kindly remember these facts so that in case something pops up in the prelims, you would be able to take them on. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article speaks about India telescope spots distant galaxy. So what exactly is this article all about? So we will be discussing in detail about the giant Metrewave radio telescope that is there in Pune. So what exactly is the GMRT? So it is basically an array of 30 fully steerable parabolic radio telescopes of 45-meter diameter. Again, it's a factual thing. Kindly remember these facts. So it is operated by the National Center for Radio Astrophysics. So what exactly is the most important part of this particular giant Metrewave radio telescope is that it is a very flexible and a versatile instrument. It is helping in all the investigations with respect to the radio astrophysical problems, which are actually ranging from the solar system to the edge of the observable universe. So it will help in understanding how exactly is the universe with respect to the observation. So what we'll be discussing in detail is with respect to the radio galaxy. So what does it say? This particular telescope was able to discover up till 12 billion light years and the galaxy from a time when the universe was only 7% of its current age was actually found by this particular telescope. So what it has further goes on to say is that these radio galaxies are a very rare objects in the universe, and all they have is a black hole in the center, and this black hole that is concentrated in the radio galaxy actually accretes all the gas and the dust from its surroundings. So because the radio galaxy has a black hole in the center, it is able to suck up all the gas that is there in and around its surroundings, and then what it is able to do is it is able to launch a high energy jet streams, and because it is able to launch a high energy jet streams, what we are able to do is it is clearly observable through this radio wavelengths. What we will have to understand is the significant aspect. So what exactly is the significant aspect? So these radio galaxies are very rare in the objects, and they are colossal galaxies of a supermassive black hole in the center, and this helps in understanding how exactly is the formation and the evolution of the galaxies, and at the same time we would be able to understand how exactly the black hole functions. We would be able to understand and analyze and study the everything about the black hole, which actually revolve around the formation of the black holes. So what are the two important significance? One is we would be able to understand the formation and the evolution of the galaxies, and at the same time we would be able to understand how exactly the black hole functions, what exactly is the formation process, how exactly is the black hole functioning, would be able to advance with respect to this particular article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article is with respect to the prelims focus. This is with respect to the silicosis. So this is also called as a minor thesis, grinder's asthma, as well as the potter's rot. So what exactly is it? It is a form of an occupational lung disease. So kindly remember this, which is caused by inhalation of crystalline silica dust. So what exactly are the causes? It comes from the chipping, cutting, drilling or grinding soil, sand, granite as well as other minerals. So what are the symptoms? It is characterized by the shortness of the breath, cough, fever as well as cyanosis, which is nothing but the bluish skin. So these are the things that we will have to know from the factual basis. So moving on, let's look into the next article, and that is to do with the awareness. So center asks states, union territory to inspect child centers on the page 7. So kindly look into it. So kindly visit the BYJU'S CNN, look into the practice questions, both the pre as well as the mains. Look into the practice questions of mains, put it on the comment section. We will evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.